Okay, so this video is going to be on order of operations. So what is order of operations? Basically, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division are the four different operations. So when you have a math problem and there's a lot of numbers and there's different operations, you have to know the right way to do it. So to remember what order to do it in, you might have heard of the acronym PEMDAS, PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Or you could have heard of BOMDAS, BOMDAS, which stands for brackets, order, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Or you could have heard of BODMAS, BIDMAS, which stands for brackets, indices, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So you can choose whichever you're most comfortable with or what's easier to remember, but just know that they all mean the same thing. First, you simplify any parentheses or brackets. Once those are done, you move on to any exponents or roots. Once those are all done, you move on to multiplication and division. Just because multiplication comes before division in the acronym does not mean that you have to do multiplication before division. You have to do whichever comes first from left to right. So if you see division before multiplication, you have to do division first, but I'll show you that in the example. Same thing with addition and subtraction. Once you're done with all the multiplication and division, then you can move on to addition and subtraction. Same thing from left to right. Just because the A comes before the S in the acronym does not mean you do addition first. You have to do addition and subtraction in order of which it comes in from left to right in the math problem. So let's move on to some examples. So here we have two examples that look very similar. And I picked this because we need to see the importance of PEMDAS. These numbers look exactly the same, but we're going to end up with different answers because of the rule. So, when you're trying to solve, just remember, whichever acronym you use, I'm going to use PEMDAS because that's what I'm more comfortable with. That's what I learned. So, is there any parentheses or brackets? Nope. So we move on to the next. Is there any exponents or square roots? Nope. So we move on to the next. Is there any multiplication or division? Yes, there is one multiplication. So what are the two numbers being multiplied? 3 times 2. So once you simplify that, we know that 3 times 2 is 6. And then you can bring down the rest of the numbers. And now our new problem is 6 plus 7, which is easy, 13. So now in the second example, we have 3 plus 2 times 7. So again, any parentheses or brackets? Nope. Any exponents or roots? Nope. So we move on to multiplication and division. So we do have multiplication. What are the two numbers being multiplied? 2 times 7. That will give us 14. And then you can bring down the rest of the problem. And now we have 3 plus 14, which is easy, equals 17. So you can tell by this example, by these two examples, why PEMDAS is important. You can have the same numbers, but based on the rule, you have to do something first before the other, and you'll end up with different answers, right? So another example, we have 10 times 2 divided by 4 plus 1 minus 3. Again, any parentheses or brackets? No. Any exponents or roots? No. So we move on to multiplication and division. So we see one multiplication and one division sign. So since the multiplication comes first, from left to right, that's what we have to do first. What are the two numbers being multiplied? 10 times 2 gives us 20. And just to make it easier, I bring down the rest of the numbers so that we know what our new problem is. Now we have 20 divided by 4 plus 1 minus 3. So we're still on multiplication and division. We have to knock out all the multiplication and division first before we move on. So in our new problem, we have a division sign. So what are the numbers being divided? 20 divided by 4. That's what we have to do first. Simplifies to 5. And then bring down the rest of your numbers. Now we're left with 5 plus 1 minus 3. So no more multiplication and division. Now we can move on to addition and subtraction. So we do have one addition and one subtraction. We just have to go from left to right. Addition is first, so we do that first. 5 plus 1 simplifies to 6. Bring down the rest. And now we have 6 minus 3 left, which should be easy. The answer is 3. Right, another example, 10 divided by 2 times 3 minus 2 plus 8. So again, we ask ourselves, any parentheses or brackets? No. Any exponents or roots? No. So we move on to multiplication and division. So we have one division sign and one multiplication sign. So we have to consider from left to right, which comes first? Division is before the multiplication, so we have to do division first, okay? So what are the two numbers being divided? 10 divided by 2 simplifies to 5. And then you can bring down the rest of the numbers. Now we have left 5 times 3 minus 2 plus 8. Again, we're not done with multiplication and division. We got to knock those out first before we move on to addition and subtraction. We do have one multiplication sign. The two numbers being multiplied, 5 times 3. That simplifies to 15. Bring down the rest of the numbers. And now we're left with 15 minus 2 plus 8. So no more multiplication and division. Now we can move on to addition and subtraction. We have one subtraction and one addition. From left to right, which one comes first? The subtraction comes first, so that's what we have to do. 15 minus 2 simplifies to 13. Bring down the rest of your numbers, and you're left with 13 plus 8, which simplifies to 21. And that would be your answer. Okay, here we have two more examples. Again, we ask ourselves, any parentheses or brackets? Yes, we do have parentheses. So we have to simplify what's inside the parentheses first. 7 times 3, that simplifies to 21. And once you simplified everything inside the parentheses, you technically don't really need the parentheses anymore. You could write it, but parentheses are used for groups. But if you only have one thing, one number, there's no need to put parentheses. So I'm just going to take off the parentheses. So 7 times 3, that's simplified to 21. Bring down the rest, and we're left with 21 minus 11, which equals 10. And that would be your answer. In this next example, once again, any parentheses or brackets? Yes, we see brackets. Let's simplify that first. 6 minus 3 simplifies to 3. And then we bring down the rest of the numbers. And we're left with 3 times 5, which equals 15. Final answer. Okay, just one more example. Here we have 11 plus 6 divided by 2 minus 4 times 3. Once again, we start. Any parentheses or brackets? No. Any exponents or roots? No. Any multiplication and division? Yes. We have one multiplication and one division. But which one comes first from left to right? The division sign comes first. So we have to do the division first. So what are the two numbers being divided? 6 divided by 2 simplifies to 3. Bring down the rest of the problem. Now we have 11 plus 3 minus 4 times 3. So again, are we done with multiplication and division? No, we're not. We still have a multiplication sign, so we have to do multiplication. The two numbers being multiplied, 4 times 3 comes out to 12. Bring down the rest of the problem. So now we have 11 plus 3 minus 12. So we've knocked out all the multiplication and division. Now we're left with addition and subtraction. Which one comes first from left to right? Addition. So let's do that first. 11 plus 3, 14. Bring down the rest of the problem. And then we have left 14 minus 12, which equals 2. And that is your final answer. Alright, so let's move on to a little bit more difficult one. We have negative 4 plus 12 divided by 2 times parentheses 13 minus 3 squared, close parentheses. So again, any parentheses or brackets? Yes, we do have parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we have to simplify. The only problem is 13 minus 3 squared, that's not easily simplified because 3 squared is not simplified. So I chose this example specifically because although we have to do parentheses first, we kind of have to do exponent first, technically, in order to simplify what's inside the parentheses. So even though parentheses and brackets is first, in this specific example, we have to simplify the exponent in order to be able to simplify what's inside the parentheses, right? So let's do that first. Three squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay, bring down the rest of the problem so we don't get confused. All right, so this is our new problem. Now we can solve what's inside the parentheses. 13 minus 9 simplifies to 4. And you could put the parentheses if you want, but it's not really necessary because it's not a group of numbers. So we're just left with 4. We bring down the rest of the problem. So now we're left with negative 4 plus 12 divided by 2 times 4. So, are we done with parentheses and brackets? Yep, there's no more. Now we move on to any exponents. Well, we did have in the beginning, but not anymore. Not in this new problem because we simplified it. So no exponents or roots. We move on to multiplication and division. I see a division sign and a multiplication sign, but because the division comes first from left to right, that's what we have to do first. So the two numbers being divided, 12 divided by 2 becomes a 6. Bring down the rest. Now we have negative 4 plus 6 times 4. Are we done with multiplication and division? Nope. We have one multiplication here. 6 times 4 is 24. Bring down the rest. And we're left with negative 4 plus 24, which equals to positive 20. Final answer. So let's move on to a different example. We have 3 plus open parentheses 7 minus 5 close parentheses times 2 plus 4 squared. So we start off with any parentheses or brackets. Yes, we have parentheses, so let's simplify that. 7 minus 5 becomes a 2. We don't need any more parentheses because there's no group of numbers inside. It's just the one number. And we bring down the rest. Okay, we're done with parentheses and brackets. Now we move on to exponents or roots. We do have a number with an exponent, so let's simplify that. 4 squared, 4 times 4, 16. Bring down the rest of your numbers. And we have 3 plus 2 times 2 plus 16. So we're done with exponents and roots. There's none in our new problem, so we move on to multiplication and division. And we see one multiplication sign. So we do that first. Two numbers being multiplied, 2 times 2 is 4. Let's bring down the rest of the numbers. And now we're left with 3 plus 4 plus 16. No more multiplication and division. We move on to addition and subtraction. And we only have addition, so we just go from left to right. 3 plus 4, 7. Bring down the rest. Now we're just left with 7 plus 16, which equals 23. Final answer. So, move on to a little bit more difficult example. We have 3 times bracket 2 plus 1 close bracket squared minus 8 divided by 2. So, not too difficult. Once again, ask yourself, are there any parentheses or brackets? That's what we have to do first. We have brackets here. Let's simplify. 2 plus 1 becomes 3. Now we don't need brackets, but for the sake of it not looking too confusing, I'm gonna just leave the brackets because we do have a squared here. All right, and this is what we're left with. So I'm leaving the brackets in so it doesn't look too confusing, but just know that you don't really need it because there's no group of numbers inside the parentheses or the brackets. All right, so technically it's going to be 3 squared. Oops. All right, so either way you want to write it is fine, as long as you know that the whatever number is inside the brackets, that's what's being exponentialized. That's what that number inside the brackets, that number is what has the exponents. So 3 is what's being squared. So 3 squared, actually I'm just going to take off the brackets just so we know, and I'm going to write the 2 here. Okay, so we have 3 times 3 squared minus 8 divided by 2. So we don't have any parentheses or brackets anymore, so we move on to exponents and roots. We do have one exponent, so let's simplify that. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. Bring down the rest of the numbers. And we're left with 3 times 9 minus 8 divided by 2. No more parentheses or brackets, no more exponents or roots, so we move on to multiplication and division. We actually have both, but from left to right, multiplication comes first. So let's do that first. 3 times 9 simplifies to 27 minus 8 divided by 2. So are we done with multiplication and division yet? Nope, we still have division to do. 8 divided by 2 becomes a 4. Bring down the rest of the numbers, and we're left with 27 minus 4, which equals 23. All right, so hopefully with practice, you've been getting the hang of this. And when you're presented with something like this example, you're not too scared because you know the rules. Just same thing. Ask yourself, any parentheses or brackets? Yes. So let's simplify what's inside the parentheses. 3 plus 1, 4. And we know that that exponent outside of the parentheses means that whatever is inside the parentheses, which we just simplified, that's who the exponent belongs to. Okay. And now I'm going to bring down the rest of the numbers. Okay, so we have 32 divided by 4 squared times 4 plus square root of 25 plus 6 minus 9. We have no more parentheses or brackets, so we move on to exponents and roots. So we do have a number with an exponent and we do have a square root. So just for the sake of the rule from left to right, let's do the exponent first. Because technically you don't have to, you can do them at the same time, but just for the sake of being consistent, let's just do it from left to right. Since the exponent is first, let's simplify that. 4 squared becomes a 16. And square root of 25 becomes a 5. So technically, just for the sake of not making this problem longer than it should be, I'm just going to do them in the same step. but if you want to do it step by step each one, you can do that too. So we simplified our exponent and our roots. We can bring down the rest of the numbers. And now we're left with 32 divided by 16 times 4 plus 5 plus 6 minus 9. So we have no more exponent or roots. Let's move on to multiplication and division. We do have both, but division comes first left to right, so let's do that first. 32 divided by 16 becomes a 2. Bring down the rest of the numbers. So we got to knock out all the multiplication and division. We still have a multiplication here. That becomes an 8 plus 5 plus 6 minus 9. So now we're left with just addition and subtraction. So we can just work from left to right. 8 plus 5, 13 plus 6 minus 9. Again, left to right, 13 plus 6, 19 minus 9. And that is equal to 10. Final answer. Okay, so that's basically it for this video. Just remember, guys, whichever acronym you want to use, whichever is easier to remember, pick that one and try to think of a phrase that will help you. I learned for PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So PEMDAS, that's how you can remember that. If you want to use BODMAS or BODMAS, you can come up with your own phrase that'll help you with that. And yeah, that's pretty much it.